you need to define what brings you joy. You need to define what you like spending time on. You need to know your values, and you need to understand how you envision your future. You need to understand your history, as you started with. And so that is my obsession right now. And what I launched at Knomee is a platform which is scalable to help people do that.
Welcome to Making Change with Your Money, a podcast that highlights the stories and strategies of women who experienced a big life transition and overcame challenges as they redefined financial success for themselves. Now here's your host, certified financial planner, Laura Rotter.
I am so excited to have as my guest today, Marla Sofer, founder and CEO of Knomee. Knomee is an app that helps you align your finances and goals through personalized insights and trusted connections with financial advisors. Marla herself is a seasoned financial services and fintech executive. She's the founder of two women's networks driving change and inclusion in corporations. She's a frequent speaker on topics related to the future of financial services, wealth, and asset management. And she's a proud mom and wife. Her experiences at Microsoft, Carta, Invesco, Exignite, and Lending Club influenced her decision to create a solution that would improve personal financial wellness and enable financial services companies to better serve their customers and prospects. So welcome, Marla, to the Making Change with Your Money podcast.
Thank you so much, Laura. It's great to be here.
I'm excited to learn about your journey and get to what you're doing today. But I'm going to start with the question I always start with, which was, what was money like in your family growing up, Marla?
It's a good question. So I, like many that are Jewish in America, have a story of refugees from Eastern Europe that really didn't have anything, lost everything. A lot of my great-grands were killed in the Holocaust. And so one set of family went first to Israel and then made their way to Texas. And the other set of family was kind of a typical Ellis Island-y type of a story, went from Germany to the UK and then made their way to the US, but came with nothing. I would say every single one of them came with nothing. And both sets kind of found their paths. One was pretty traditional New York, one in Texas, El Paso, Texas, very different story.
Texas.
Yes, very different story, kind of an entrepreneurial, what we call it fondly like border machers, where you kind of like buy and sell stuff across the border and, built a business. And so for me, I was raised in an environment where you can find the American dream. You can build a business. There is a path and a hope. And what's really has been stunning for me is I'm pretty tapped into that really critical component of my identity and belief around money, as opposed to my husband's. My husband is Israeli, and he was raised in a family that also emigrated there with nothing, but they kind of went on a different journey, like from military, went into careers that were kind of related to their jobs and worked in the same job for, 30, 40 years until they retired and didn't have any of that entrepreneurial backing. It was, very much kind of you live to work. You don't necessarily have to enjoy it. You're there for the paycheck. And I would say my belief around money is you make of it what you want. And so I've had a very different idealistic vision, which has served me well.
I love that. First of all, your self-awareness, and obviously this is the work that you continue to do of the difference and perhaps similarities between yourself and your husband. And though you started off with what were challenging circumstances that your parents faced, obviously, and yet the message is resilience and positivity and hope and even the benefit of entrepreneurship. It really resonates with me. I too grew up, my parents were a younger generation than my husband's parents. My husband's parents grew up during the Depression, so they weren't first generation American. And so there was this message that you work for a paycheck. You make sacrifices in life for that paycheck. And my message, my parents were not quite that young, but like children of the 60s, that like, you should love what you do. And if you don't find something else to do. And it's interesting in a marriage that there's
Same. I feel that resonates a lot for me as well, Laura. Like that kind of, I definitely have that dynamic in my marriage. And it makes for a lot of hard conversations about money.
yes. So did you grow up in Texas? Did you grow up in New York? Where?
No, Texas. I was born and raised in Texas. And yeah, my parents are still there. They're separated, but still there. My dad built a business as a financial advisor at Merrill Lynch. He had 3 kids already. My mom was also, they both have their own entrepreneurial journey, even after their own parents had an entrepreneurial journey. So my dad like worked for my grandfather. He didn't make a lot of money. He was miserable. And one day, I think in 1984, he had had enough, and a friend told him, "Hey, you can come work at Merrill Lynch, build a business, become independent, sell stocks at that in those days, and call out of the phone book." And he did, and he built his business. And my mom had a very similar journey. My mom's a huge inspiration for me, where she started as a teacher and then she kind of rose in ranks, became an administrator in private colleges. She's very mission driven and wanted to kind of focus on underserved communities and help them get credentials so that they can get better jobs and find more wealth accumulation. And also, 1987, she had 3 kids, took out a huge loan, and launched a business. It was a huge risk, didn't have a lot going in, very traditional kind of blue collar background, and became an entrepreneur and had a very, very, long, hard, successful growth.
What kind of business did she launch?
A private college. So if you're familiar with kind of technical colleges like DeVry and that's like the big one most people have heard of, but it's a whole big industry. They're very focused on collaborating with the government also in terms of funding to get underserved demographics who might not have gotten their high school degree, a GED, give them some technical skills. Back in her day, it was computer skills. It was like, let me teach you word processing and DOS and a lot of kind of the older languages around computers. She's also had schools that focus on nursing and truck driving and masseuses and paralegals. A lot of those industries are served by these private colleges that take individuals, give them an education, and help them find trades.
Oh, thank you. And Marla, how did that affect you? I mean, you mentioned that you saw your mother take out a huge loan. There was risk involved. Were you still in the home? Did you?
Oh, yeah, I was 10. So I don't know if I was really that aware at the time, but I definitely saw how my mother always worked more hours than my dad. She had, I think, more evening hours. I think she would always leave later. He would leave. Anyway, she had she just had these big ambitions. My father also did, but in a very, very different, both very entrepreneurial way. And I think for me, just like what you said, Laura, there was this belief and value of enjoy what you do, but pour your heart into it. It's not going to be easy. Like working hard is part of living life. Both of my parents, they're now 75 and they both still work and they enjoy work. It's a part of who they are. It's a part of their life. And so I feel that for me as a kid, that model of you go to work, you work hard because you want to, because there's something in it for you, was a huge part of my own belief system around work. And for me, I always was, I'm a bit of a pleaser and an overachiever. I have some of those traits, but it was not frequently about the security and the money. Maybe it should have been sometimes, but it was more about work hard and enjoy the work. Work really hard. Don't even count the hours. And so I pour in crazy hours. I pour in crazy amounts of stress and time and energy, but it's because I enjoy it.
It's a great message that you got from your parents. And it sounds like you continue to get
Thank you.
from your parents. Because there is always a trade-off, right? We have scarce resources, and time is one of those scarce resources. And understanding how to allocate that time well is probably part of our life's work, right? And as I've come to believe less in the idea of work-life balance. I don't think there is such a thing. I think in each period of life, we stress perhaps work more, other times perhaps family more, but it's never going to be a complete balance. And you really need to be able to follow both your head and your heart. And it sounds like you watched your parents follow both, that it wasn't purely financial decision to work hard.
Yeah. One thing on that, Laura, I know you told me you do also yoga and meditation. I also do yoga. There's a yoga teacher who said once, and I really loved it, that balance is not a destination. It is something that you always have a relationship with. And it just stuck with me that balance is, you never achieve balance. It's something that you have more of or less of. And it's true even like when you walk down the street, like learning how to walk requires balance. And sometimes you're a little bit more firm and solid, and sometimes you're a little bit less, but you have this relationship with balance that kind of ebbs and flows.
Thank you so much for sharing that, because as someone who did yoga this morning, I'm thinking, right, even when you're in tree pose, which for those of our listeners who don't do yoga, you're balancing on one leg and you feel the shifts and there's a constant adjustment, perhaps, that your body is making as you walk, as you attempt to balance. It's not, as you said, that's so beautiful. I love that, Marla, the idea that it's a process, not a goal.
Yeah,
So what was
exactly.
your process? I'm assuming you took it for granted that you would go to college. What was your journey?
Yeah, I did. I went to college in Texas, at University of Texas at Austin. I sacrificed. I would say money always played a role. And for me, I did have a deliberate decision making history around money starting there, where it was my parents had saved up a little bit, but it was kind of, we had a little bit. We could go and get our bachelor's potentially, depending on where we chose, whether we would have to get loans or not. Both of my brothers chose to go to private schools. I went to the University of Texas and got a scholarship because I knew I wanted to take a junior year abroad. I knew I wanted to travel. I knew I wanted to do all these other things. And I said, well, I don't want to spend all that money on college. I would much rather make these decisions that allow me to do the things that I know are going to be important to me. And so I know that this budget is somewhat fixed. I'm not going to be able to work full time as I'm in college. And I made a much more deliberate and thoughtful choice. So I went to the University of Texas and I got a scholarship, which meant that my tuition was, I don't know, $1,000, $2,000 a year. It was something quite ridiculously low. And it is a very good school. Yeah, I was happy to, to be local and to get into a great school. Had a great experience, got super involved in peace and conflict resolution. And I moved overseas. I moved to Israel, met my husband there, and studied conflict resolution, got very involved. It was kind of in the wake of the Oslo Accords when there was this strong belief in peace in the region. And there was a lot of investment. There was a lot of hope. I actually spent some time in Gaza. I've been to the West Bank and I've been to Egypt and I met with some people there. It was extremely volatile back then, nothing like now. And so after I graduated from my BA, I moved to Israel and I lived there for 2 years. I started to get my master's there. The economy was horrible because the security environment was horrible. There was a rise of a tremendous amount of security situations, suicide bombs, buses being blown up, and it's termed the second intifada. The economy was bad and my husband was graduating. There were no jobs. So Israel was not then like it is now. A lot of kids coming out of college were going to become waiters and waitresses and figuring out how to just make ends meet. And so we decided to travel around the world and see where we can, take a next step and then maybe come back to Israel later, which never happened. Maybe still will in the future, who knows? And ended up, I'll kind of make a long story short, got a job in New Jersey, lived there, worked in nonprofit, got into financial services in 2004. And my career has really followed a very non-traditional, non-linear path, following my curiosity. Started a nonprofit and then went into coding briefly and then into international banking, learned a lot. But I think I'm always one of those people that like once I learned, 60 to 80% of what I needed to know, it was time to move on. So spent 6 years at JP Morgan, 5 years at BlackRock, and realized this isn't the future. I need to be part of tech, and I need to be part of how tech is innovating and changing the way this industry operates to actually solve problems. I was also very motivated by passion and mission and impact, and really loved these themes around democratization of financial services and helping more people make better choices with the right tools and having access to those tools. And so that got me into fintech. Been in fintech since 2015. I've run partnerships at 4 fintech companies, and I worked at Microsoft, focused on the strategy for financial services and where it's going. And all of that culminated in this new phase that I'm in now as of a year and a half ago, recognizing from a very unique perspective the gap that is holding people back from making better financial choices. And a lot of it has to do with information availability and self-awareness and the ability to hold your financial choices accountable. And so before you can make a financial plan, you really need to know yourself, and you need to know to clearly define. I wouldn't even say goals, because goals is a big, hard to define question. You need to define what brings you joy. You need to define what you like spending time on. You need to know your values, and you need to understand how you envision your future. You need to understand your history, as you started with. And so that is my obsession right now. And what I launched at Knomee is a platform which is scalable to help people do that with the support of gamified wellness focused technology. And with that access to the information, they can then make better financial choices, much more aligned with who they are, what they care about, where they want to go, and the impact they want to have in the world.
Thank you, Marla. And I'm excited to explore Knomee and this phase of your life. And before we get there, I'm wondering, you did identify, something about your personality where you love learning new things, and then in the past you've moved on. Can you also identify for us what are the skills that you see as the through line?
Yeah, I talk about this one a lot, and it goes back to that peace and conflict resolution stuff. So I think a lot of my key skill is understanding incentive really quickly. I think people and companies are run by people. So I would just say humans are driven by incentives, and those incentives are rooted in values. And so you really need to deeply understand someone's incentive in order to help them find a path forward. Because if you're not tapping into their values and what they're looking to achieve, what's going to incentivize them to take action? And so going back to very, very high stakes context of peace and conflict in the Middle East and applying that in each of my jobs where I focused on strategic partnership, where you have multiple parties coming together and figuring out, how do I ink a deal? What is the win-win-win? In order to get to that end state, you have to deeply understand incentive, and you have to understand what are the motivators, how are they going to get there? Well, what can I help them achieve? And it is actually pretty scientific. If you boil it down, there needs to be an understanding of the ends they are looking to get to. It comes back to the core tenets of like SMART goals. And objectives and key results. What are the objectives of a particular entity, whether it's a human or a company? And what are the results they need to see? And then there's a lot of peripheral. There's a lot of, well, who's accountable to getting them to those results? And who are the sponsors that are pushing that forward? Who are the ones that believe in that and want to see it happen? And the most important question always is why? Like, what is it that they really are looking to achieve? Why are they looking to achieve that? Because if you don't understand that, that's really the core. That's that, Simon Sinek, like the inner circle. When you understand the inner circle why, then you can really start to clarify the outer circle so much more easily. So for me, that's been the through line, is when you're talking either directly with an individual as a high net worth client, but certainly as it relates to strategic partnerships, trying to get glimpses into the why so that you can really frame out the outcome, which is the what. And then there's all of the how. The how is always, complicated, but you get there.
I really love this, and it brings up some things for me. First of all, when I'm first getting to know a new client, someone I'm working with, I like to go through their communication preferences. And one of the things I explore is, what motivates you? Are you motivated by the people involved? Are you motivated by recognition? And it is sort of I give multiple choices, and I'm curious to then ask it of you, Marla, as someone who, you're clearly motivated. We talked a little bit about watching your parents and what motivated them. What motivates you?
Yeah, it's wild how hard it is for people to answer that for themselves. And they go through all these quizzes and try to like make sure that they understand it. There's what I think motivates me. I think it's a deep self-awareness question that I'm doing my best to try to figure out what my motivators are. What I would like to believe it is is impact and meaning. It is kind of those magical words, impact, meaning, purpose. Like, what am I really here for? And that was for me. I know that we'll get to this, and I'm sorry to come back to it again, but the transition to becoming a founder, it entailed a huge amount of sacrifice. And so when you sacrifice, you definitely need to key into the motivator because you're giving so much up. And if you don't understand the motivator, then it's hard to give that much up, and there's kind of extrinsic motivators like money, capital. Let me see. It could be status. It could be, having a bigger friend group or, having a whatever it is, right? I don't know. But there's, I think, this really powerful intrinsic motivator. And I kind of got to the stage, I was 46, I'm now 47, and I could not find the motivation to find another job. I could not find the motivation there were times in my last role before I became a founder where I got off BART going into San Francisco and I literally had to think to myself one foot in front of the other. I couldn't walk in the door. I was so not motivated to go into that job. And I that raised all these questions like, what is it all for? Like, why am I here? Am I here just because I need the paycheck? Is that really what this is all about? And it made me answer all these questions. I'll give you one other like quick thing, and don't want to take all the air here in this podcast, but for me, I did a session with a coach who did this like meditative journey. And the question this coach asked me, and it was just one session because then I was like, oh, too vulnerable. Don't ever want to go there again. Thank you. But it was like this really deep experience for me. And she kind of had me envision 75-year-old me sitting next to me. And what does 75-year-old me feel about me right now? And I broke down, like crying. I was like, she just feels shame. She feels like you didn't tap it. You didn't even try. And here I was, like I'd worked at the best companies in the world. I had a great salary. And my 75-year-old me knew that internally, like you're still coasting. You're still doing like you're following another person's version of what you think you should be doing, as opposed to what you truly want to be doing. It's much harder what you truly want to be doing, but you don't believe in yourself enough to do it. And that was like this slap across the face of reality for me. And it is so in line with what I want other people to experience. I want other people to get slapped across the face, theoretically. I won't really do that. To make choices that are so much more aligned with what they really want, not what other people are expecting with them, and not with standards and norms. Of course, when it comes to money, you have to survive. You have to provide a roof over your head. You have to be able to pay for your necessities. You have to, everyone's got different obligations. You've got to meet your obligations. Many of us, even once we're able to do that, we stay on that hamster wheel. And, I certainly got to the point where I can't afford the rest of my life unless I keep making money. But how long am I going to allow others to determine how I do that? And defer to their own definitions of the terms, what that looks like and who it's for and the purpose and mission of how I'm making my money and the change I want to make. And so I went on this journey to see how could I close that gap between what I do and why I do in a much more effective way.
So beautifully said. And I just wrote that down because I think so many of us fall victim to what you said, following another person's version of what you think you should be doing. And it's not our fault. We're in this culture that, you go to college, you get a good job, and then, like you said, sometime in your mid-40s, often you wake up and go, how'd I end up with this mortgage and these obligations? And why am I putting one foot in front of the other? So I'm sure this resonates with a lot of our listeners. I also wrote down something you said at the beginning, Marla, which is you've always been a deliberate decision maker around money. So as we now get into the discussion of Knomee and your vision, which I see how much it lights you up, what was the deliberate decision making as you walked away from employment to become a founder?
Part of it was I feel like I had proven to myself that I could get a job, and not just any job. I'd proven to myself repeatedly, I can get a good job. I can get a job that pays me really, really well. It doesn't mean I'm going to like the job. It doesn't mean I'm going to respect the people I work with. And it doesn't mean I'm going to believe wholeheartedly in the purpose of the company. In all cases, I wouldn't join unless I did. But I would say in many cases, I got there and I was like, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. And I don't really respect that guy or maybe even the CEO, and I don't like necessarily align with the vision of where this company is going. And I don't necessarily think that they make good decisions. In some cases, they do because they're good businesses. They create profit. The deliberate decision for me was I had earned enough of a little bit of a cushion to say, can I give myself a shot? And what does giving myself a shot look like? I'll be candid with you and say that in the beginning, it was extremely, extremely hard to have the family support I was looking for and to try to really look for that support I needed to get there. The first year was really, really challenging. I had no money. I had no funding. I didn't get any commitments before I started this company. Not recommended. You should probably have some commitments from funders before you go and launch a software company. But I wanted the experience not only of building a company, I wanted the learning. Like I wanted the value that I would get and bring to whatever I do in the future in launching a software business, in actually diving into what does that mean? What does fundraising feel like? What does overseeing all of these different functions that have to come together to launch a company feel like? And I might be great at it, I might be horrible at it, but I know I'm going to learn a lot. And that deliberate decision was how critical is this experience to me? And is it worth sacrificing the pain, the income, the disruption to my family, the disruption to the savings that we have kind of accumulated to date? And is it worth it? And the flip side of that is not now, when? When am I going to make that bet on myself? And how can I live with myself having gone through that experience of looking down at myself as 75-year-old me? How could I live with myself if I didn't give it a shot? How could I continue on this journey if it didn't feel 100% purely authentic, full of integrity, where I knew what I'm doing is at least in my control. I know I'm going to make mistakes. Man, I've made a ton of mistakes, and I thrive on that. I'm okay with it. And so I think the deliberate part is I knew it was going to be hard. And I kind of built a bit of a reserve of, okay, this is the energy I'm going to need to deal with the hard. And it was much harder. That reserve was probably pretty thin. And then I was like, oh, I need more reserve of energy to kind of deal with how hard this is. But every day, that's how it is. I wake up every day and I'm thrilled that I get to do what I love and pursue a mission that I envision of something truly impactful that I believe in. Other people believe in it too. Finding a way to make money isn't easy, but every day I'm waking up and doing it.
Thank you for sharing that. And I'm also hearing, given how you just started that description, that you had savings in the bank. So you had thought about how, not only whatever emotional reserves you needed, but whatever financial reserves you needed, you knew that you had that runway. And you also knew that if you felt like it wasn't working, that you could get another position, that you had the skill set, that you had the network. And so this wasn't sort of a choice that was irreversible.
Exactly. Yeah.
So thank you. And please share with us now about Knomee and where you are.
Sure. So almost 2 years, I guess. I started in January of 2023, working full time on it. And what Knomee is, it's a entirely different approach to finding the support you need to make financial choices, to driving those connections that will guide the right services and products to you because you know who you are and you can advocate for those things. So Knomee is this step before you work with a financial planner or advisor, or even, in time, hopefully the step before you take out credit or buy an insurance policy. every financial product is in the business of selling something into your future. And money, holistically, I believe that money and trust are synonyms. Money is trust, and you really are buying into this concept of trust. In order to use money as a tool rather than look at it as a goal, you have to trust that it is doing something. Going back to what we were talking about with respect to OKRs and what are the incentives and the key results. What Knomee's all about, and you asked about the through line and what I'm really good at, is getting really crisp and clear about your incentives. Until you know your incentives, you can't do the what. That is Knomee. Knomee is your own personal profile. We call it your financial identity. When you know your financial identity, it is your why, your values, it is your history, it's your goals, it's your attitudes about money, it is how you define and not only define it, you understand your own opinion about risk. In which scenario would you act A or B, and why would you act in that way or B? So we talked a little bit about the risk I took in becoming a founder. And a lot of the why was, as you said, because I knew I had skill set, I knew I had options, I knew I had a bit of a cushion. So there's kind of some very tactical thing. And then there's this kind of deeper, more intrinsic, incentive for me, which was, I know this is so critical and important to me to get this done. So what Knomee becomes is to get geeky a little bit, it's a data layer. It's an opportunity for individuals to know themselves. And the key part of Knomee, there's really two massive key features of what we're building. The one most important one, I would say, is you own your information. Nobody may see it without your consent. When you build a Knomee financial identity, because especially the financial industry is in the business of selling trust and selling money, you are the one who has your fingers on the keys to determine, who do I trust? Who has earned my trust? What are they giving me in return for the privilege of seeing me, of knowing me, of seeing not only how much money I have and where my statements and accounts and transactions and concentrations and net worth and all of those things are, yes, but seeing my values, seeing what matters to me, seeing who I share my money with and how I envision my future. What does that look like? Try Knomee will help you. Like, we help you write down and articulate how you envision your future. How do you want to spend your time? What brings you joy? These are the bits of information that a lot of financial advisors and planners, the planners are a bit better, don't ask or have never been trained to ask. They are trained to ask you, and they have to regulatorily ask you about your risk. It doesn't have to make sense to you. They just have to have the form in the file. But they have to they have to ask you that. They have to ask you a bit about how much money you have. There's a whole host of thousands of other questions they don't have to ask you, and they don't. And many are not trained to ask. It's your money. And this is kind of the major message of Knomee. It's your money. Your money is an extension of your impact. You have if you are paying your bills, even your bills, like if your purposes and values is you want to put a house over your kid's head, or you want to have kids in the first place, it's another way that your money can have impact. It's not kind of passive and done in an unaware way. It's done in a very mindful, aware way. I am using my money to align with my values. And it can be as simple as that. I want shelter, or it can be, I want to have a real impact on sustainability. I want to do something around gun control. Maybe I just want my money to be thoughtfully allocated in a way that recognizes that I have worked at tech companies and have a lot of tech stocks, and I don't need any more tech stocks. Thank you. But unless you get really clear and give guidance to your money is always going to be handled by someone else. And it's interesting, as we were talking about this earlier in this conversation, it's the same as your energy. And we talked about how I didn't want to live by the rules of what somebody else kind of put on me, how I'm supposed to be acting. Same goes for your money. I don't want my money to be guided by someone else. It's my money. I have earned with hard won. There's been a lot of work to get this cushion that is an opportunity for me to have the impact I want to have in the way I want to have it. And so Knomee allows me to do that by articulating that clearly and advocating for that with the team, the people that work for me on my behalf. And so when you build a Knomee profile, You may allow your advisor to see it. You may find a new advisor. We have advisors that are on our platform that are looking for clients, and we help them find the right client and the client find the right person because we know so much about their business and because we know so much about the client. And so we help create that match really, really beautifully. And what's nice about it is the first question is never, how much money do you have? Because just asking that question is isolating. It is condescending. It's shaming. It is, you haven't earned the right. We don't have a trust built up yet for you to ask me that question. And so Nomi's first question is, tell me about yourself. What do you care about? What do you like in the world? How do you like spending your time? When you reimagine money as a tool versus a goal, what is it a tool for in your life, for you? And that can change. That's the other beautiful thing about Nomi is it can change. So people change all the time. Their circumstances change, their values can change, their goals certainly change, their attitudes may change, how they were raised might change. They might go through some trauma. So they're allowed to change. And the industry today doesn't recognize that. When you go through a financial planning profiling, you might do an onboarding. It might take a very long time, but then it goes into a file. And then maybe once in a year, there's like a couple of tweaks and updates, but it's kind of out of your hands. The planner or advisor is kind of looking back at that file and saying, what does this person care about? When in the meantime, last week something huge could have happened to you and a lot could have changed, and that might not have been your first phone call to say, hey, something's changed. Like I went through. So Nomi it gives you that power to say you're allowed to change and then work your way through achieving the goals that you're looking to achieve on your journey, finding your own motivation to get there.
Thank you. It sounds, through my eyes as a financial advisor, it sounds like a great platform. As we spoke previously, and I'm really also in this role as a sense of mission, sort of a self-defined yoga teacher for one's money. And I really went into what's known as the retail side of the industry, or working with real human beings as opposed to institutions, because I find the stories and learning about the people and the history and their values so compelling. And then the how, as you said, of course, can be complex, but that to me is not the interesting part of the work. And people always evolve. I'm told sometimes that I have too many touches during the year, but I want to check in. I want to know what's going on. We're always changing, and it's important to, again, I love what you described about Nomi, to really understand the deep whys of the people I work with and not just the dollars and cents. Someone said to me recently that what we truly want, whether it's security, whether it's freedom, whether it's connection, we have no way of measuring that. So we use our money as a proxy because we can measure that. But money cannot be the means to an end. It's only a way of facilitating our living lives that we truly want to live. So how does Knomee work?
Yes, I will tell you. But I also wanted to I will tell you how Knomee works. I just wanted to say you're also very good at it. Like even in this conversation, you're very good at and skilled at helping somebody tap into kind of opening up and sharing their story and their why. And so I just wanted to recognize how it seems like you found something that is just super well suited to your own skill set. And I kind of recognize that in you too. So how Knomee works, it is a super accessible gamified app. You go to Knomee.com. It's spelled Knomee.
And it will show notes.
Awesome. Thank you. And the idea, if it's not obvious, Knomee allows you to know me. I want to know me. I want to choose who knows me. It's important for me to know myself so I can become my own best advocate. So when you go into Knomee, we immediately start asking you some questions and you get rewards. Somebody recently compared Knomee, it's like the Duolingo of financial wellness. So we are constantly giving you positive incentive, and there's compulsion loops kind of built in. It was really important for me to bring in technical talent, not from the financial industry. I wanted to bring in technical talent that deeply understands humans and psychology and compulsion loops and behavioral psychology. How do I get somebody to do this for that, recognizing that this is giving them value and wanting to do more of this? And there are so many applications out there that we've learned from. Some of our reference points are Duolingo, Noom, LinkedIn, Hinge for dating. A lot of these tools are excellent at getting you to share information about yourself, because when you do, you get more value out of the tool. And that's really where Knomee comes in. We're making it fun. We're making it accessible. This process of self-discovery is helping you ask questions, like I shared of this individual, helping ask questions of yourself you might have never asked before. You might have never even thought about them before, and you might have never even paired them with money before. So I think creating fun gamified experiences where you go through, we won't even asking you, what are your goals? There's always an option to enter goals. But for many people, goals is a big question. And so it's hard for them to answer, and they don't know what their goals are. And so we ask much easier questions. What brings you joy? What are the things that you look back? Let's say if we do an exercise sometimes in webinars, and when I do speaking at women's groups, look back at your credit card statement last month and just circle the experiences that brought you the most joy, where you say, that was money well spent. And it's so insightful. You can go back and say, maybe it was a meal. Maybe it was a movie with your kids. Maybe it was a coffee that you got when you were on a walk that was really impactful, but that $5 coffee just holds a memory for you. And so I think really being cognizant of your money is a tool. And when you recognize the moments that your money is operating in sync and in harmony with how you want it to be used, you can make more of those moments. And so Knomee helps you do that. And the more you create into this profile, the more value you get out of it. The more you are able to recognize, wait a second, this is where I want to optimize my energy, my time spent, my money spent, and where I want it to go in the future. And so it's a big shift. When you go back to what you said, that maybe I'm doing too many taps, and I've heard that from advisors. They're like, my clients are like, all good. It's because I think as a society, we have been trained, especially as we work with a professional, to say out of sight, out of mind. I don't want to think about it. Thinking about money makes me stressed. I hate thinking about money. I hate talking about money. Whenever I talk about money with my partner, we fight. We don't agree on it. It's just stressful. Maybe I'm just talking for myself now, but I feel that the alternate to that is, I do want to talk about it. I'm so excited to tell you about how I want my money to do for me now. Something's new, something's exciting. I can't wait to tell you about it. So there's a huge social norm change that has to happen to get there. I think Gen Z is a bit more tapped into it. Frankly, they spend money on whatever the heck, and they're much less susceptible to judgment around how they're spending their money. The whole FIRE movement that came up with millennials on, what? I don't want to work and be as rich as I possibly can and die as wealthy as I possibly can. I want to work as much as I need to get to an early retirement and live my life the way I want. And it might mean that I get income through different means, that I'm not in a full-time employee type job. And I love that. I love that they're thinking about money in such a different way. And that's why it's caught on, because people are desperate for this. I do want to talk about money. Why has the society trained me that I shouldn't? And that when it's out of sight, out of mind, I'm better off.
So interesting, a lot to think about there. Think it's very true. And is there a cost? How does Knomee make money, and who pays for what?
Yeah, excellent question. So there is no cost today for Knomee. In the future, there might be. So today, if you're an early user, you come in, it is free. It will be free for you forever. This is our effort to get users. We would love users to come in and try it and see what value they get out of the platform. We also want feedback. The way Knomee makes money is if and only if you are looking for a provider to find you. The mechanism of providers to find you today is broken. It is through a friend, through a colleague. Maybe you go to a talk at the library where somebody is telling you about their advisory practice. There is nothing wrong with that. But is it going to find you the right provider for you? Maybe, maybe not. Is that person going to know everything about your particular personal needs And people are complex and their money is complex. If I am a woman in my demographic, let's say she has a nice nest egg, she's between 40 and 60, and she may have a lot of different things going on. She might be a veteran. She might have some private equity assets. She might have real estate assets. She might have gone through a divorce. She might have some forgotten 401ks. She might have an inheritance of a business from her parents. How am I going to deal with that? And you have to find providers that know how to talk to you on your level. You might want to have a provider who can talk to you, which I think you're great at, Laura, at a much more mindful level. Like get a lot more in tune with how your money is helping you in your holistic path on your journey. And some people really love that and want it. And other people are like, no, I just want the facts, ma'am, and show me the graphs and the charts. And that's great. But how are you going to find the right match if you're not starting off writing down who you're about? So those advisors, if they get matched with an individual, would pay a fee for finding a lead. Today, it is extremely expensive for them to find their niche client. And so we make that easy for them. And it's totally transparent to the user. And it is not ever sold behind their back. No information is shared with absolutely anyone without your consent. So you have to consent to say, yes, I would like to find an advisor. And I will allow the advisor, this particular one advisor, to pay for that service of finding me. So if you think about the analogy of Google or Facebook. So Google and Facebook have your profiles and they sell you all day long, but you don't get to touch it. You don't get to change it. You don't get to feel it. You don't get to choose who sees you. They are selling you to whoever they want and who is paying them the most money, whether you like it or not. Knomee is doing the same, but you get control. You are the one in control. It is your profile. If you never want to hear from XYZ, you will never hear from XYZ. You get the chance to say, my profile, we plugged into the people I trust, and maybe I'm free and I would like to be a prospect of these services that I want to get in touch with. Help me find those and only those. And don't hawk me off to the highest bidder if I don't want to hear from those, because that's confusing and it undermines me trying to achieve my own goals in my life.
Privacy is so important, and we've all sold our information. So it's very comforting to hear that that's one of your stated values.
Absolutely.
Users will maintain their privacy. So as we're coming to the end of our conversation, Marla, and I've so enjoyed this, I always like to find out how over this time, and you've been through a lot of transitions, how has your definition of success shifted?
That's a good one. So I didn't share this story, which I often share, that kind of what pushed me over the edge to launch Knomee was I had been talking about it and talking about it and talking about it, years even. And my daughter said, when are you going to do it already? And so for me, doing it, because it's hard, because my daughter is looking at it, my son is looking at it, and they're watching me, my family is looking at it, my friends, my network, that's success. It is, I am living in my own integrity. I'm being as authentic as I can be. It's hard as heck, and I wouldn't say I'm good at it yet, but I'm finding my voice. I'm kind of stumbling around and getting to that point where I find my voice and I live with integrity between the career I've chosen, this hard path I'm going down, and who I'm serving. And I want to serve humans, people, to live better lives. And so to me, that's success. Like if I am kind of hitting on those cylinders, that's the most important thing for me.
Thank you so much. And I will confirm, Marla, you have more than found your voice. It's really inspiring to hear your story. And I look at Knomee, went on the app, and it's very engaging. And I think you'll be helping a lot of people. So thank you so much for being my guest.
Thanks for listening to Making Change with Your Money. Certified financial planner Laura Rotter specializes in helping people just like you organize, clarify, and invest their money in order to support a life of purpose and meaning. Go to www.trueabundanceadvisors.com/workbook for a free resource to help you on your journey. Disclaimer, please remember that the information shared by this podcast does not constitute accounting, legal, tax, investment, or financial advice. It's for information purposes only. You should seek appropriate professional advice for your specific information.